I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 322. Assembly Bill 322 revises provisions relating to Kratom products. Assemblyman Nguyen, you may start when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Chair Marzola, Vice Chair Haurgi, and the rest of the hardworking Committee on Commerce and Labor, I am back in front of you again. I promise this is the last time today for presenting Assembly Bill 322. Again, for the record, my name is Yui Nguyen. I have the honor and privilege to represent Assembly District 8 in the Nevada Assembly in Southwest Las Vegas. So, again, thank you for hearing AB 322 today. It's called the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. This legislation came about after some of my constituents reached out and contacted me with concern about prohibition of Kratom. Many of my constituents find benefit from Kratom, working with advocates that include veterans, people struggling with substance abuse, and people that find health benefits from taking Kratom. We try to develop legislation that would protect consumer from buying illegal or adulterated products. With me today is David Goldwater and Mac Haddo of the American Kratom Association. They will be able to answer a technical question about this proposal. Thank you again for your consideration. I look forward to delivering a clean bill that not only protect consumers, but make Nevada known as a place to buy and sell safe and effective Kratom. And Madam Chair, with your permission, I'd like to now introduce Mr. Goldwater.
Mr. Goldwater, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. David Goldwater, representing Pinion Public Affairs and Nevada Wholesalers. Thank you for hearing the bill, and thank you to Assemblyman Nguyen for introducing the bill. The bill, as it was drafted, is imperfect. We have before you, hopefully, an amendment that you can see that makes two important changes. First is the bill was originally laid out that the Board of Oriental Medicine would be the regulatory body. We have since changed that to the Board of Agriculture. The director of the Department of Agriculture has signaled a willingness to come up with a compromise, a way in which we can effectively regulate it, and we will be able to come back to this committee, hopefully, with something that works. Second important change is a prohibition for the Board of Pharmacy to schedule something that hasn't been scheduled by the Food and Drug Administration, specifically Kratom. That I hopefully have worked out a compromise with their lobbying advocate in which we can allow the Board of Pharmacy to continue to schedule it if they need to, but if the product has been appropriately regulated by the Department of Agriculture, it is not subject to that particular restriction, nor would it need a prescription. So with that, if you have any questions of me, I would ask you, I'm happy to answer them, of course, but would like to turn the presentation over to Mac Haddo of the American Kratom Association.
Madam Chair.
You may begin when you're ready. Are you going to be going through the bill?
I'm going to go through provisions of the bill with the background as to the purpose for it, if that's appropriate.
Perfect.
Thank you. Madam Chair Marzola and members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity. For the record, my name is Mac, M-A-C, last name Haddo, H-A-D-D-O-W, with the American Kratom Association. I serve as the Senior Fellow on Public Policy. We represent the 15 million Americans who regularly consume Kratom safely. We believe that science should dictate good public policy, and that's why I'm here today to talk about that. In 2009, there were 9 deaths attributed to a Kratom product in Sweden that led to the hysteria in some cases about Kratom because it was, in fact, perceived to be dangerous, led some countries to ban it. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration started on their crusade to ban Kratom here in the United States. That led in 2016 to the first application by the FDA to the Drug Enforcement Administration for scheduling. That was rejected by the Drug Enforcement Administration for insufficient evidence. In 2018, the FDA made a second attempt to the Department of Health and Human Services, transmitting it to the DEA, and that was rejected by the Assistant Secretary for Health, Dr. Brett Giroir, who characterized the FDA's application as being disappointingly poor evidence and data and a failure to consider the overall public health. Finally, in 2001, the FDA attempted to get scheduling internationally using the UN Commission on Narcotic Drugs, of which the United States is a treaty partner. That was rejected unanimously by the 12 members, independent scientists on addiction and substance abuse from around the globe, saying there was insufficient evidence for scheduling. Unfortunately, there was an attempt by the Board of Pharmacy that was referenced for scheduling here in Nevada, and that leads us back to where we are today. In 2019, Nevada did pass legislation that starts this journey to protect consumers. This bill will strengthen it. It will add additional labeling provisions requiring serving sizes, the number of servings per container, and the number of servings that a person should take during the day of a Kratom product. It will restrict a Kratom product from containing any controlled substance or dangerous ingredient that would result in harm to a consumer. It will require that it not allow for any enhancement or synthesizing of metrogenine, the basic alkaloid of Kratom, or 7-hydroxymetrogenine, a metabolite of Kratom. That cannot exceed greater than 1%. Those are safety factors that will be important for the proper manufacturing and sale of a Kratom product. The product will be required to be labeled with all of the ingredients in it so that the consumer knows exactly what they are consuming. We strongly favor this provision. It also will require that the address and the name of the manufacturer distributor be on the Kratom product. Many Kratom products today don't have that, and we need to make certain that if there is an adverse event, there is a way to track who the manufacturer distributor is so that the appropriate steps can be taken to correct that problem. It also restricts sales to minors, which we strongly favor. Those provisions actually go to good science. We know that if you Google Kratom, you're going to hear or see a lot of things that are outdated. It will follow the FDA's narrative. We recommend that you look at the KratomAnswers.org website, which is co-hosted by Drug Policy Alliance, by the Law Enforcement Action Project, which is an international organization based in Las Vegas of retired judges, law enforcement officials, and prosecutors, and the International Plant and Herbal Alliance, along with the American Kratom Association. It is a composite of the current science and good policy on Kratom that's available, and explains why these other entities have rejected the FDA's applications for scheduling. There were 9 states that have passed the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. 6 states did ban it between 2012 and 2017 because the FDA told them that federal scheduling was imminent. In the state of Rhode Island, the director of the Department of Health has said that Kratom doesn't meet the 8 factors, and they've started the process to withdraw it. In Vermont, March 1st of this year, they officially withdrew the restrictions on Kratom that were instigated by the FDA. In the state of Wisconsin, the Controlled Substances Board, 2 weeks ago, formally declared that it doesn't meet the 8 factors that are required for scheduling, mirroring what's true in the federal or in the Nevada law and federal law as well. In the state of Indiana, another banned state, the House voted 53 to 40 to rescind the ban and enact the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. 4 of those 6 states have now taken positive steps to correct what was done early on with this, and we need Nevada now to strengthen this provision. We are willing to work with the Board of Pharmacy to find a good compromise. I'm not sure we're there yet. We want to make sure that some body cannot use science or abuse science in order to restrict consumer access. And I'll close with this. Kratom, of those 15 million Americans and tens of thousands of Nevada residents who safely consume it, saves lives. You're going to hear that testimony. It is documented in peer-reviewed scientific articles talking about how people are using it as a harm reduction tool to get off of opioids. It reduces opioid overdose deaths, and the National Institute on Drug Abuse director strongly supports that provision and has testified to that fact before the United States Congress. I'm glad to answer any questions, Madam Chair, that may be appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Haddo. And Madam Chair, again, Yui Win for the record. Just wanted to put on public record, before the hearing began, I did got some concern from several groups, including Board of Pharmacy, as well as Nevada Psychiatric Association, as well as Metro in Las Vegas. I did tell them that I will state in public record that we will be working with all of those stakeholders after the hearing in terms of any types of changes that they want to see working, and that after the hearing today, we will work with them on that. So you will hear them in the opposition today. So I just want to make sure that I put that out there. Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll stand ready for questions from the committee members.
And thank you for letting us know about the amendment. We will start with Vice Chair. You want to go first? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, Assemblyman. Thank you for bringing this bill forward. But I know that originally in original NRS, the finding authority was listed in statute, and it looks like it's being removed, and it's now. I'm not sure if this is addressed in the amendment. I haven't seen it, but I'm assuming just the name of the board's moving from the Board of Oriental to the Board of Agriculture. But is that going to be consistent? Are we removing the finding authority from statute and allowing the Board of Agriculture to bring it via regulations? And if so, just curious as to why.
Thank you. David Goldwater, representing Nevada Wholesalers. Through you, Madam Chair.
You could go direct.
Yes, ma'am. We would not necessarily limit the finding authority in statute, but I think working with Director Goygochia, we would empower the regulatory process to be able to address anything he needed, and would address that in any upcoming amendment.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And if I could, I just have probably a comment first and then a couple of questions. I guess it was, 4 years ago, 2019, our former colleague, Assemblyman Wheeler, came to me and said, would you like to do this bill with me? It's about Kratom. And I think much like members of this committee, I said, what's Kratom? And, that started sort of my journey in learning about this topic and this issue. And like Mr. Haddow said, I think there was all kinds of different information out there online about whether this was safe, whether that had negative impacts on people. But ultimately, in looking at that research, I think I concluded what you all said today, that the reports of overdoses were generally from things that were adulterated substances. And so I'm proud to say we did the first bill here, AB 303 in 2019, that got bipartisan support in both houses of the legislature. Excited also to hear from one of my friends down in Las Vegas, Mr. Guidry, who I think is going to talk about what Kratom means to him and how it's impacted his life. So, no surprise, I'm a supporter of this bill. I'm a sponsor on the bill. I appreciate you bringing it forward. My couple of questions that I had, and sometimes this happens in the legislative world, I signed on to this bill because I think it's a good bill, and then I promptly got a whole bunch of emails, which I do read my emails, and I got tagged on Twitter and Facebook saying, why in the world are you trying to ban this substance in Nevada? And so could we just say definitively on the record here that the intent of this bill is not to ban Kratom, but to essentially bring light to it and make sure that we're protecting consumers?
Madam Chair, David Goldwater, representing Nevada Wholesalers. Mr. Speaker, again, thank you for your leadership on this issue. We can say definitively that we are not trying to ban Kratom. Quite the opposite is true. We are trying to make Nevada a place where Kratom is safe for consumers and available to the people who need it. That was the story that was reported and out on Twitter. I think that tagged you was erroneously reported as a ban. The reporter called me contrite and mentioned that he was going to run a story that corrected the previous one, and hopefully, and I think he was a genuine good man that was willing to do so.
Thank you. Follow up, please. And you're correct, Mr. Goldwater. There was a story that came out, unfortunately, that said it was a ban, and sometimes it's hard to get around that narrative, but just wanted to make sure that the world knows it's not what is being attempted in this bill. And then, I had a question on the amendment. I did have a chance to look at it. It seems fairly conceptual, but wanted to just confirm a couple of things. I think you mentioned one of them in the testimony. Originally, this bill had targeted the State Board of Oriental Medicine, which I think you'd indicated is not going to be the regulatory agency, but just to make it clear, the regulatory agency envisioned in the amendment is the Department of Agriculture, but there was also a reference to the department or to the pharmacy board, and I think your testimony was the guidance to the pharmacy board is going to be you're not allowed to schedule this unless the federal government does, maybe with some other circumstances, but that in your mind, the Board of Agriculture is the proper place for this to be regulated, tested, all that kind of stuff, and that those conversations are ongoing about what that might look like.
Mr. Speaker, David Goldwater, yes, indeed, the conversations are ongoing, and the regulatory structure, as you outlined it, would reside at the Board of Agriculture, and the prohibition would apply to the Board of Pharmacy.
Great. Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, if I could also respond to Speaker Yeager. The American Kratom Association.
Please state your name for the record.
I'm sorry, Madam Chairman. Matt Caddo, for the record, from the American Kratom Association. We are strongly opposed to the unilateral authority of the Board of Pharmacy to have this ability to ban a product that has not yet been named a controlled substance by the Drug Enforcement Administration under the Controlled Substances Act. We recognize that there are occasions when the states need to act, and that was largely what led 6 states to act as they did on the belief that the DEA was going to schedule Kratom because the FDA told them so. And unfortunately, earlier actions by the Board of Pharmacy were led in large part by the information provided by the FDA, which is now, as has been evidenced by the four of the 6 states that are now rescinding their bans, need to have good science as the predicate for those actions.
Madam Chair, could I just make one quick comment? No more questions. But I thought Mr. Hadar brought up a good point, and I failed to mention this, but when I first looked into Kratom, I did see that the DEA was going to put it on the Schedule 1 controlled substance, and I think something I've probably never seen before. I think they actually had a hearing on it, and there were like thousands of people who showed up talking about how important this was to them, and I think they backed off of that, which to my knowledge doesn't happen on a regular basis once you get to a hearing phase. So I wanted to provide that context, and then also wanted to just recognize in the audience we have one of our former colleagues, Assemblyman Nelson, who's here as well, who's worked on this issue over the years. So good to see you here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Members, any additional questions? Assemblyman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair, for the time. And, I have reservations, and I'll start out. I appreciate the Speaker's acknowledgement of former Assemblyman Nelson, who is a good friend of mine and a man that I truly, appreciate and put great trust in whatever he tells me. But I've got to say I do have reservations on this bill. Even at Washoe County, Reno, the coroner's office, in the last 4 years has directly attributed overdoses, deaths, to the sole use of Kratom. And I will say, putting a notice on the prescription is nice, but not everybody reads prescriptions or the notices on their pills or what they purchase. I have, doing the Google search on people involved in this does bring out a variety of questions to me, why some countries have banned it, states have banned it, who has personal financial interests in it possibly, who doesn't. What I would offer and suggest is that I do think the Pharmacy Board should be able to weigh in on this. I truly do, because of just those deaths. We've had numerous deaths in the last 5 years. Just in northern Nevada, some 35 deaths have been directly or indirectly attributed to overdoses, uses of Kratom, which brings up concerns to me. What I would suggest as a possible thought pattern is looking the same as what we do with pseudoephedrine, taking it off the shelves at gas stations, etc., putting it behind the shelves where you actually have to question, and the pharmacist can talk to you about what other drugs are you taking, do they interact with, etc., and making this truly a safe drug as you're trying to achieve. Those would be my comments. And I trying to figure out, as I keep talking, how to make it a question, but I would just offer to continue talking. Would you be willing to talk with me about this and possibly looking at some amendments? Is that a question? That's a question.
It's definitely a question.
Yui Nguyen for the record, Assembly District 8. Thank you, Assemblyman O'Neill, for that. Yes, just like I mentioned in my remarks earlier, this is not a done deal yet. We're still working through some amendments that are coming after this hearing, and I'd be glad to work with you, Assemblyman, to make sure that your concerns are addressed.
I appreciate that, and thank you for the time, Chair.
And Madam Chair, Matt Caddo for the record, American Kratom Association. Assemblyman O'Neill, the information that you have just articulated about the deaths was a part of a review that was conducted by the Centers for Disease Control. They looked at reports from medical examiners and coroners and examined whether or not they truly were kratom caused. And in that examination, and I'll be glad to share with you the actual report from the CDC, they identified that there were 91 deaths that were reported by medical examiners and coroners that detected kratom in the tox screen. First, it would not be a surprise for people that are struggling with opioid and drug addictions, trying to get off of those drugs using kratom, which it has been proven to be a successful harm reduction tool. Of the 91 deaths, they found that most were fentanyl, buprenorphine, cocaine, and heroin as adulterants in it, and this bill would help considerably. Of all of the deaths, they determined that there were 7 that were kratom alone based on the reports from the medical examiners and coroners. When the CDC applied for each one of those that had a blood sample available, of those 7 deaths, with more sophisticated analytical tools that were not available to the coroners and medical examiners, all were polydrug use. So we understand that this is a significant problem. It is equally important that the decedents and their families get the truth. And the truth opens up the doorway for us to properly regulate products, and that's why this legislation is so important. You cannot adulterate it. You can't put a dangerous substance into it, and that will stop a lot of the nonsense that goes on, and tragically some of the deaths that result from that are attributed by medical examiners and coroners inaccurately to kratom. They're actually adulterated products. The same thing happened in Sweden. Those 9 deaths that I referenced earlier were all attributed to a kratom product called Krypton. An independent, peer-reviewed analytical study that's now published found all 9 were because it was adulterated with O-desmethyl tramadol, a dose of which, and that's the chemical that's used in the production of an opioid, tramadol, the dose of which in your cup of coffee or water or a soda would kill you. That's what happened. And yet we allow kratom to be demonized by some well-intentioned people that don't have the full science. We've looked at every single death, autopsy report and tox screen that is publicly available. They've been examined by independent forensics toxicologists. We can't find a single one attributable to kratom alone.
Yes. Sir, I'm going to question some of your authority and your interest in the proffering of this and questioning the Washoe County medical examiners that they don't have the expertise to call cause of death. I'm just going to let it ride. We'll talk later about it, but thank you very much for your statements. I'll disagree with them respectfully.
Thank you, Assemblyman. And yes, at times we will have to agree to disagree, but as long as everyone is respectful, that's what I expect in this committee. Any additional questions? Assemblywoman Duran.
Hi, and thank you for the presentation. I know there's this product was out there, and we didn't know much about it, but now that you want to establish regulations, you said there was like 6 other places that have legalized this. Do they have already a kratom in different package forms for food and all that? Is it already regulated, and are you going to follow that model, if so?
Matt Caddo, for the record, with the American Kratom Association. There are 9 states that have passed the Kratom Consumer Protection Act in various forms, one of which is the state of Nevada, which in 2019 passed what we think is the basis for this bill today. The state of Utah, state of Georgia, Arizona, Colorado, Oregon, Oklahoma. It was just passed in West Virginia, and it's on the governor's desk, having passed unanimously in Virginia by both houses. It's under consideration in 21 other states today, because the option is either you ban it, which of course science doesn't permit, or you regulate it. Leaving it unregulated is the Wild West, and that's where the bad actors come in and actually are able to adulterate products, because Kratom doesn't give you a natural euphoric high. You need to spike it if you want to do it, and they only do that for economic benefit for their bottom line. We want Kratom to be pure Kratom, used for the benefits that people have, properly labeled and properly regulated.
So those other states have not regulated it like how you want to in Nevada?
Mac Haddo, Madam Chair, with the American Kratom Association. They have. Georgia's strengthening their bill, as Nevada proposes to do here, with giving it more parameters and more regulatory control to make sure these products are safe. But the other states have done an excellent job. The concern we have is for those states that have no regulations, because that's where the bad actors are running rampant.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker?
Thank you, Chair, for the second opportunity. And look, I just want to say I respect Assemblyman O'Neill's comments. We're sitting really far apart from each other on the dais. But, you know, when I first started looking into this, I had that concern, right? People were telling me there were people who were overdosing and dying from this substance. And so, you know, my request would be let's have that conversation, right? Let's take a look at that data, because I'm certainly one who, I will admit, sometimes I'm wrong, more than I should be. And so if if that's happening, let's have a conversation about that, and I would welcome that discussion. I didn't take the comments, Mr. Haddo, of being disrespectful, just indicating that different labs have different technology, and some are more sophisticated than others. But for one, I would welcome that conversation, not just here in Nevada, but around the state, because I think we hear a lot of things, and we need to get to the truth of it, right? And so I guess, you know, the question that comes out of that, and I think I know the answer, but given that we have an amendment that's not quite fleshed out, right now I can walk into my corner store, and I guarantee every single one of you, if you didn't know what Kratom is, when you go out in the community now and you drive by smoke shops, where you're going to see signs that say Kratom, and you're going to recognize them now. But you can go into these places and you can buy the product, and of course we have the prior law that requires that it be labeled. But what I think we don't have is any sort of testing on the product, right? And to contrast that with cannabis, we have a very robust testing regime that makes sure it's not adulterated. So if you could just confirm that one of the discussions hopefully you're having with the Department of Ag is whether some testing is in order, and whether that's going to happen for all products or whether that's going to happen selectively, but to make sure that we're not having deaths from products that are adulterated, because right now I don't think that testing's happening.
Mr. Speaker, David Goldwater, Nevada Wholesalers. Yeah, that certainly is part of the discussions. The amendment as proposed and the bill as proposed, having been around this building for a while, I know that the body likes to take an incremental approach towards regulating anything, especially the first time out. And so whether or not testing ends up being part of it, that certainly will be part of Assemblyman Wynn's discussions. And if that's something you urge, we will certainly do that. And that will be on the agenda to discuss whether or not that's part of the incremental approach as well.
Madam Chair, if I may, Mac Haddo with the American Kratom Association. Speaker Yeager, we advocate that with every registration that is made of a Kratom product that's introduced for sale into the state of Nevada, it should be backed up with a certificate of analysis from an independent third-party lab certified by the state that says that it meets all of the standards required in the bill. And then if there is any concern that's raised by a complaint, that company would be required at their expense to submit an updated certificate of analysis. And then if the Department of Agriculture still believed that there was a legitimate, reasonable concern, that they could then do the test themselves and bill the vendor, or else they lose their ability to sell in the state. We think that's a reasonable way to protect not only consumers, but it also protects the state from having extraordinary expenses. If a vendor wants to sell this product in their state, they should back it up in terms of its compliance.
Thank you for that response. We're going to move to testimony in support of Assembly Bill 322. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in support to Assembly Bill 322?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Irvin Nelson. I'm from Las Vegas. I know a number of you, and I had the honor of sitting on this committee myself a number of years ago and enjoyed it very much. I'd just like to say that, I also need to put on the record that I'm a lobbyist for the American Kratom Association. I have looked into this and will speak more with Minority Leader O'Neill about this. I understand that there are concerns. I've looked into them also, and I think that, as Mr. Haddo said, it's got to come down to the science. There's a lot of opinions that people have, and that we hear that kratom alone has caused deaths, and those are anecdotal stories that I think need to be looked into, and with the best technology applied to the screening what's in the bloodstream. One of the things that induced me to get involved in this, along with my friendship and respect for Mr. Speaker Yeager, is that there are a number of people who've told me that they rely on kratom to help them stay off of opiates. And so I think that needs to be weighed in the balance. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support to Assembly Bill 322? And you may start when you're ready.
Peter Guidry, Las Vegas. I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the platform to be able to speak today. Also, thank you to the rest of the committee as well for your support. I'm here to, first of all, I'm Peter Guidry. I'm a retired Air Force veteran. I was medically retired due to my service-connected disabilities. I incurred that doing security forces, my time in the military, and up to learning about kratom, I had been on different types of narcotics, fentanyl patches, things of that nature that the VA gave me. Part of the side effects of that medicine had a torn GI, so I was throwing up blood because of the narcotics that the VA was giving to me. In about 2010, I found through Pure Health, which is a local supplement store which sells, protein powders, vitamins, and that different things. I found at Pure Health this product right here called Kratom. And for the past 10 years or 12 years, I've been taking it responsibly. So I want to put in my support for Bill AB 322. I want to support that. And I want to thank you guys for actually considering to put some of the different regulations on there to address Assemblyman O'Neill's concerns. There are bad actors in this community. Some of the products are not labeled correctly. We don't know what we're taking, so people may have a negative experience. But there is good companies like this particular kratom that I've been taking for 10 years. It tells me right here, not for sale to minors. 2 level scoops is 2 grams. Take maximum dose in 24 hours is 2 scoops. So it gives me all the instructions clear as day. So I've been able to take this kratom product responsibly, and what it's allowed me to do is part of my daily work. I'm a co-founder of a suicide prevention nonprofit called Forgotten Not Gone, and we engage in suicide prevention through veteran peer support outdoor recreation. So this kratom allows me to control my service-connected disabilities, the pain from that, the inflammation, and allows me to participate with my fellow veterans on a daily basis. Haven't had any type of side effects from the kratom at all. but I do support you guys putting labels on it to make sure that we can get the gas station type of Kratom products out of the way, some of those smoke shop type of things. And then by you guys putting the correct labels on it, I think more people could take it safely, this product like I have for over the past decade. So again, thank you for your support of AB 322. I love to see the proper regulations and the things that the American Kratom Association recommendations. Those are incredible solutions. So thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony today, and thank you so much for your service. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am Peter Guidry's better half. Just kidding. But seriously, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Forgot Not Gone as well. And I'll keep it very short and quick, but I was diagnosed in 2007 with massive fibroids. The pain was excruciating. They gave me hydrocodone, which is a narcotic. After a few years, I was dependent on it, and I realized that. And I was able to come off of all the narcotics in 2011. But the underlying fear of that is the continuation of chronic pain. So when you have chronic pain and you take away what you've been using to help it, there's a fear there. My husband was using Kratom. As he said, we found it at a local supplement store. It's always been known to us as a supplement and nothing else. I still waited 2 to 3 years because I was afraid. So I just kind of endured the pain, which shut me down for 3 to 5 days. As he said, we do veteran peer support, outdoor recreation. So I am physical. I started taking the Kratom after I met the owner, actually, of this. It's triple tested, and it's led me to be, in my community, being able to do things for my veterans. The medicine I was given at the VA was FDA approved, and it had several negative side effects. It almost took my life away. And I've been using this for the last 8 years responsibly, and it's allowed me to get out and be inspirational to my other women veterans. My husband and I met in the military. I also did security forces. I have negative, back spasms and knees and things of that. And this has helped me get out in my community in the city of North Las Vegas. So I strongly think that it should be regulated. Like he said, there's plenty of people who do the correct thing and do utilize all the regulations put in order. I want to thank Mr. Speaker Yeager for doing the research, doing the hard work, and taking what we say to heart, because we've helped different veterans by utilizing this as well that were traumatized from, narcotics that the VA gave them. And now they use this and they've been able to get out, get active, and get their life back. So I do support AB 322, and I'd like you guys to consider implementing these regulations, and it'll help us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for everything that you do in our community. Can you state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, ma'am. It's Kelly Guidry, Kelley. Last name is Guidry, Guidry, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Forgotten Not Gone Veteran Suicide.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 322? I don't see anyone walking up. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Thank you, Chair. If you'd like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 322, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 322. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Leah Case, Leacase, here today on behalf of the Nevada Psychiatric Association in opposition to Assembly Bill 322, We want to thank the Assemblyman for working with us. We have been working up until today to try and get some language in place that we could be neutral on and comfortable with. The Nevada Psychiatric Association has seen some folks coming into addiction treatment centers with Kratom as they're presenting addiction. We have data showing in Washoe County 7 overdose deaths in the last quarter for which those were reported, that those are attributed specifically to Kratom. Which is also why we need certification, right? So if we have folks who are saying, they're buying this and it's an adulterated product, we need to know that that's why. So we've been working on an amendment to the amendment, which would include, instead of registration, a certification process. So certification goes a little bit further than just registration. Certification sets standards. It lets us know that things are safe, that they're being reviewed. A registration just tells us, here's the list of folks who are selling. So we'd love to see certification process in this amendment. We would also like to see the Department of Agriculture develop some kind of public-facing portal to talk about the violations and the doses that have happened, and to help bring light to that consumer protection piece so we know what's happening there. And then as far as adverse events reporting, we do have the Surge and ACORN. They're these two committees that meet in the interim and a little bit during session to look specifically at overdose deaths and substance use issues. So we would like to see some unintentional overdose-related deaths to Kratom included in that reporting, so getting back to those committees and the folks who have those boots on the ground. I did submit this. It's a little bit late, and it's still a work in progress. Like the Assemblyman mentioned, we're still working. But just wanted to let you all know that we are in opposition as it stands right now. We do have that data showing that folks are overdosing, that folks are getting addicted to this substance, and so we do need some better regulations in place. Thank you very much, and I'll be here for questions.
You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. My name is Beth Schmidt. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. We appreciate Assemblyman Wynn bringing this bill forward, and we agree with Speaker Yeager that we need to look at this in incremental steps. So at this point, the FDA has not approved Kratom products for medical use. We are in opposition to this bill as written. We agree that Kratom should not be regulated by the Oriental Medicine Board, but we believe that ultimately the regulation should be with the Pharmacy Board. We feel this bill should be also in NRS 453, which covers controlled substances, in addition to the bill puts it into NRS 454. The bill as written does require some things of our forensic labs that we're not equipped to do these things at this point, not that we couldn't be. But the bill as written, it requires a botanist to determine if the leaf is from the Mitragona speciosa plant. Well, forensic labs do not typically have a botanist on staff, but the bill also requires forensic labs in Nevada to procure instrumentation and supplies to validate a new quantitative method. Not that that couldn't be done, but that's not in place at this point. Additionally, our forensic labs are not able to differentiate between the natural and the synthetic derived compounds from this plant. Now, in reference to what Assemblyman O'Neill was talking about in Washoe County, Clark County has seen a year-on-year increase in deaths partially or wholly related to Kratom. Since 2019, 59 people have died in what the Clark County coroner has determined was the result partially or wholly to combined drug intoxication, and that one of the combined drugs does include Kratom. And as was mentioned before, the most common drug that it is combined with is fentanyl, but the Clark County coroner has also seen it in combination with heroin, methamphetamine, oxycodone, and cocaine, which are all seen alongside it. Now, again, we do welcome this look at the regulation and look at the incremental steps. Now, in Clark County, there have been 2 deaths that have been determined by the Clark County coroner to be a result of acute intoxication of Kratom. And one was in 2017 and one was in 2022. We are in opposition to the bill as written, but we do appreciate Assemblyman Wynn's efforts to address the regulation, the sale, and the use of Kratom. We look forward to working with him moving forward.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 322? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Callers, if you'd like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 322, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and honorable committee members. Excuse me. My name is James Creel, C-R-E-E-L. I am a researcher and administrator for the Compassion Center and the Center for Incubation and Findings Research, a disruptive healthcare research institute and program incubator founded in 2001. Compassion Center is 100% dedicated to serving patients and patients exclusively. Today, I am here on behalf of the Coalition for Patient Rights. CPR is a patient-led consortium of patients, 501c nonprofit organizations, and local companies that are dedicated to promoting patient rights, education, advocacy, and healthcare innovations. Today, we are here to provide gentle opposition to AB 322 in its current format because patients are beyond tired of being targeted, monetized, and marginalized in the name of profits. While on the surface, AB 322 is heading in the positive direction and is providing a wide range of hope for those that rely upon Kratom. However, the bill itself and a larger constellation of complexities in which I base my concern revolve around the lack of accountability, including but not limited to thorough testing, consistency, safety and purity standards, as well as education for the retailers, as well as a stark contrast and a lack of education, or let's say accredited education for medical professionals. All of these issues can result in a far more reaching and unintended consequence and a wide range of barriers that these patients do not need to be encountering. While it can be perceived as advantageous for us to further regulate Kratom by creating a registry, it just doesn't go far enough. There are multiple strains with multiple resulting effects, so proper education on those effects and the contraindications with other medications are just as important as proper testing, since fillers and toxins can be worse than the risks associated with pure products in the first place. We feel that AB 322 should address all of this. It is our opinion that if passed in its current format, the bill will create way too many loopholes that can be exploited at the expense of Nevadans. Yes.
If you can wrap up your testimony, please. Your 2 minutes is up.
Thank you. The Compassion Center's medical providers and researchers from the Center for Incubation and Findings Research oppose AB 322 in its current format. James Creel for the record.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line in opposition to Assembly Bill 322?
Hi, this is Katree Saunders for the record, K-A-T-R-E-E-S-A-U-N-D-E-R-S. Thank you, members of the committee and the House, for putting this bill up today. Today I'm representing Coalitions for Patients' Rights and also the Vice President and co-founder of Pardon Me Please. I'm opposed to the current format of AB 32, which would ban Kratom unless the Nevada Board of Oriental Medicine listed as a registered product. However, I am in support of the concept itself, as smoke shops need regulation in regards to quality, purity, etc. for Kratom. I would like to see AB 322 amended to require smoke shops to register with the Department of Agriculture and comply with certain quality and purity standards, because I have friends that use this medicine to help their opioid addiction. And I think that further implementation of research and things would help people have better access and safety so they wouldn't get sick and people wouldn't have overdoses. And thank you for your time. My name is Katree Saunders for the record.
Thank you for your testimony today. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in the neutral position for Assembly Bill 322. Here in Carson City, I see a few people coming up. You may begin when you're ready.
Good day, committee. My name is Barry Cole, B-A-R-R-Y-C-O-L-E. I'm a physician here in northern Nevada, and I'm very interested in ethnobotany. I've been all over the world. I've led people-to-people delegations to the People's Republic of China, up to Lhasa, Tibet, and some other parts of China to try and understand what's out in the world. It's fascinating when you try to understand ethnobotany because it doesn't follow Western logic. So when I talk with a counterpart abroad and I talk about randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials, they look at me like I've grown horns and they say, we've given this to millions of people over thousands of years. We know what works. That makes no sense to me, so we can't really have a full dialogue. The question about the lethal dose that kills 50% of people using Kratom products appears to be 32 grams, 32,000 milligrams. To be able to get that, you have to eat approximately 1.5 kilograms. That's about 4 pounds of the leaves to reach a known lethal dose. And the comment for this ethnobotany toxicology site was you basically sit down and eat a tree at one time. If I use prescribing software that I do every day on my phone to practice medicine, Kratom actually comes up. It's not FDA approved, but the software is helpful for me in knowing what I'm going to actually prescribe, so I can give advice about things that I can't. And while the reported uses are all described as insufficient evidence, it's fascinating what is clearly understood are all of the adverse reactions. And it's fascinating because just about everything has been reported with Kratom because it's never been properly studied. What we're doing is we're kind of replicating the whole cannabis debate that went on 100 years ago until very recently, where we really had nothing but anecdotal data. What I see the bill as being able to eventually do is allow us to properly study Kratom and understand it. If we can get a handle on regulating it, so when I go into a convenience store to get a Slurpee for my grandson, I'm not trying to explain to him, don't buy what's up here on the counter by the register. You don't know anything about those products. Those are just quick grab products, impulsive buys. Really want to have this studied, have it regulated, have it understood. And yeah, I'm a member of the Nevada Psychiatric Association, and I do understand why we're opposing it as an organization. But as an individual, I'd like to actually study it and understand it before we take a decisive action. That's why I'm in neutral. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Hillerby on behalf of the Nevada State Board of Pharmacy. We are neutral in AB 322 as introduced because it did not involve us. I did meet with the sponsor of the bill and talk about his intention, as well as Mr. Goldwater testified with David is also. We have talked about an amendment that we would like to continue to work on that would provide a path for legalization to Kratom that met the specifications that you would set in law and in regulations by the Department of Agriculture, but would preserve the Board of Pharmacy's role that it has had for decades in preserving the public health and safety by being able to retain our authority to list illicit Kratom should the science warrant. That process involves a public workshop, a public hearing, and then that regulation coming before the Legislative Commission. We think that process has worked well, does serve the public, and again, we'll continue to work with all the parties involved to see if we can come up with a bifurcated system that does look a lot, as some of you have suggested in testimony, like what we do with marijuana right now. There is a legal path for Nevadans to be able to use and distribute and sell legal marijuana. There is illegal marijuana in larger quantities, and that has not gone through the testing and the certification processes that you laid out in law. So again, we'll be happy to work with the various parties to do just that, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hillerby. You may begin when you're ready.
For the record, Ashley Jepson. I'm with the Nevada Department of Agriculture, and I'm the Division Administrator for our Plant Health and Compliance. We do appreciate the Assemblyman's coordination with our department on some conceptual amendments. Based on some of the testimony today, I just wanted to provide some information. Typically, processed products are not regulated by the Nevada Department of Agriculture. They fall under a Nevada Health Authority. We, at this time, don't regulate processed food products or any processed products. It pretty much ends at the raw ag piece is really on the human food where we stop. We have looked at some of the Kratom bills that have passed in other states. One of them in particular is under Utah, and they do have language in theirs that any of the products must meet federal and state food safety requirements. So that's one consideration to be thought through, as food safety has implications from the receipt of the ingredients through the processing to the transportation, as opposed to just being analyzed in a lab. So we are seeing that in some of the other bills. With that, if it is the conclusion that the department takes this and develops a food safety program, there certainly would be a fiscal note for us to establish that type of a program on top of what was also mentioned in doing the age verifications and ensuring that retailers are compliant with that, and potentially a public-facing portal. Those would all come with the fiscal note that will be prepared. I think that pretty much concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in a neutral position in Carson City?
Wait, Ms. Jepson, before you leave, could I just ask a quick question? Thank you, Chair. And just because you mentioned it, that you had looked at some of the other bills, and particularly Utah's bill, in your review of that, were there any other states where the Department of Ag was really involved in this process, or can you speak to maybe like what the matrix of those bills were? And I think Utah's a natural fit because they're pretty much right next door to us. So any insight on that would be appreciated.
For the record, Ashley Jepson, Nevada Department of Agriculture. That is a kind of a tricky question, in that a lot of Nevada Department of Agriculture's they share the hat in inspecting food processors. So in our state, we're separated. We're different departments. I think Utah is one of those where it is their Department of Ag does those types of inspections, and it's under their hat. I can't speak to that 100%, but I know several of the states that they mentioned, they're combined agencies, and they're doing that. So, and I did mean to mention in my testimony, I know Cannabis Compliance Board, they do inspect those facilities, but they actually have health inspectors that are verifying the stuff we talked about on top of the testing. I forgot to mention that. It's kind of a critical piece. So, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in a neutral position to Assembly Bill 322? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
If you'd like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 322, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Assemblyman Nguyen, would you like to give some final remarks?
Yui Nguyen, Assembly District 8 for the record. Again, thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and all the committee members for your patience with this. Learn a lot through this process. We still have a lot of work to do. Just want to remind everyone that AB 322 is known as the Consumer Protection Act. So I am looking forward to work with all the stakeholders to make sure that Kratom is safe by addressing all concerns with certifications and ensure that all guardrails and accountabilities are in place before we move forward. So there's still a lot to do. I want to thank everyone who participated in all the testimony today, and Mr. Haddo as well as Mr. Goldwater to work on this with me. Again, Speaker Yeager for making sure that we walk through this process correctly and ensuring that everything is being worked on before we take the next step. So thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and member of the committee for your patience on this. Thanks so much.